Hello, and welcome to the introduction of UOPY, short name for UniObjects for Python, the newest client API from Rocket Multi-Value. My name is Jennifer Mao, and I'm a principal software engineer at Rocket. In this presentation, we'll start with a high-level overview of UOPY, followed by a comparison between UOPY and a similarly named product called U2Py. After that, we'll show you how to quickly get started with UOPY. Then we'll close out the presentation with some best practice recommendations on how to write code with UOPY. So, what's UOPY? First, it is a pure Python API, written 100% in Python. It only makes use of standard Python libraries. Therefore, it is very lightweight and very portable. It is compatible with any Python 3 versions. However, it will not work with any Python 2 versions. The documentation of UOPY is embedded in its source code, making it very easy to use in interactive Python or any Python IDE. We are going to publish UOPY to PyPy, the official repository of Python packages. So you can use pip, the standard Python package manager, to easily install and upgrade UOPY. Second, UOPY is an UniObjects API, which means it provides all the standard UO classes such as session, file, command, select list, etc. As an UniObjects API, it also supports NLS, SSL TLS, and connection pooling. UOPY is configurable through a simple-to-use configuration file, which can be used to change its behaviors externally without having to make any code changes. It also comes with comprehensive logging for easy troubleshooting. UOPY supports all the existing license types: regular server license, device license, and pooling license. To sum up, UOPY is just like UniObjects for Java, i.e. UOJ, and UniObjects for .NET, i.e. UO.NET, but with an easier-to-use Pythonic interface. In general, UOPY can be used in any application in which you need to access MV database server over the network. Typically, these are Python command line, console, terminal-based applications, or simply scripts, or Python web applications, and Python GUI applications. It can also be used in a middle tier within a multi-tiered system. What are the key benefits of UOPY? Obviously, the most important one is that it lets you remotely access MV database servers in Python. And that completes the story of MV Python integration by enabling you to code in Python in the web layer as well as in the backend database layer. By just being a Python package, it allows you to fully leverage the huge Python ecosystem to achieve rapid application prototyping and development. Following the Python community's conventions, UOPY is distributed in source code format, making it open, debuggable, and extensible. Lastly, because of Python's popularity as a programming language, by offering UOPY, we hope to make it easier for MV customers to hire and retain young MV developers. As you know, MV Python integration first started on the backend with the database server. Almost all MV database servers released in the past few years have come with a Python module called UOPY. Because the two names are so similar, we think it is important to highlight the key differences between UOPY and UOPY to minimize the potential confusion that MV customers might have. First, UOPY is a client-side API, while UOPY is on the server side. UOPY is written entirely in Python, making it Python version independent, OS platform agnostic, and MV server version independent. While UOPY is mostly written in C, closely linked with the database engine and specific Python C libraries, thus making it not only database server version and Python version dependent, but also OS platform dependent. The primary use of UOPY is in network-based pure Python applications, while UOPY runs on the server side and can be used to extend or complement existing basic applications. Together with the basic Python API, UOPY and UOPY really completes the MV Python integration story, and full-stack MV application development in Python is now achievable. Now that we have covered the high-level stuff, let's see how easy it is for you to get started with UOPY. First, if you haven't installed Python 3 on your machine, please go to the official Python website to download and install it. If you are a beta participant, please follow the Rocket Community Portal link sent to you to download all the beta program files as well. Next, you'll need to use pip to install UOPY into your Python environment. For official releases, we'll put UOPY in PyPy, and we plan to host the source code and docs of UOPY in GitHub. After the installation of UOPY is completed, you should be able to follow the steps in the screenshot to quickly test it to ensure everything is set up correctly. As mentioned earlier, the documentation of UOPY is embedded in the source code as Python doc strings. That means you can use Python built-in help function to display them in the console. UOPY documentation is also available as HTML files in the UOPY_docs.zip file. The UOPY documentation contains many example code snippets that show how a specific function, class, or method is typically used. In addition, a more comprehensive example application is provided for your reference. Now let's watch a short demo. Let's do a quick demo to recap what we have covered in the last two slides. What you're looking at is my downloads folder. As you can see, I have already downloaded Python installer and all UOPY beta program files. First thing to do is to install Python. And I want to check this box here because I want all the Python executables be available in the path. So I'm going to start the installer, let it run. It will take a while. I'm going to pause the recording and come back when it is done. Okay, now Python is installed. Let's move on to install UOPY into the Python environment. And we're going to use the pip command. Looks like UOPY is installed, and ignore the warnings about pip version. Now we can give UOPY a try. First you need to import UOPY into Python. And because UOPY comes with built-in documentation, we can use Python help function to display documentation of the whole Python modules or individual functions or classes in UOPY. For example, we can do this, and it will give us all the documentation we have written for UOPY. Or we can drill down a little bit. This will only display information on the connect function. And you can see it also includes some examples of how you can make a connection. We can also do this. This will display the documentation on the file object. Each of the methods, the arguments, the return, the possible exceptions, and it also comes with examples. UOPY documentation also is available in HTML file, and it is contained in this zip file. It is the same information as what you get with the help function, but it's just much easier to navigate. All right. So now we know how to get help or information on UOPY. Let's try to actually use it. In order to access any MV data server, first we need to make a connection. And we're going to follow the documentation, the connect function, to make a connection to a server that's running in my environment. So let's do this. UOPY.connect. Host IP is 193.168.211.128. My user ID is, and my password is 2. Well, no error is reported. That means the connection is made. So with that connection made, we can actually try to run a command on the server. So let's find out what we can do with the command. Okay, we're going to follow that example there. So we're going to do a command equal to UOPY.command. And we're going to do a list walk. All right, we're going to run that command. I'm going to print out the command response. Voila, just like what you would get at the TCL or ECL. And next, we can even try to read a record from the walk file. So to do that, we can do this. Let's see if we can find an example somewhere in the documentation. Let's see. Let me try it again. Oh yeah, we can just use this simple example. So with UOPY.file walk as walk file record equal to walk file.read print record.list. Voila, we read the list record from the walk file, and we print it out in a Python list format. In addition to UOPY documentation, we also provide you with some example code developed by our support engineers. And they're here. And you can read the code in your favorite editor or Python IDE. You can run them or even debug through them to get familiar with the most common use pattern of UOPY. So that's it. That wraps the brief demo. And I hope that's enough information for you to get started with UOPY. It sure looks easy to get started with using UOPY. But before you do that, I want to share with you some information on how to fully leverage UOPY's Pythonic interface. Please keep them in mind when you are developing with UOPY. First, get familiar with UOPY configuration in order to take full advantage of it. UOPY comes with a set of default configuration parameters for connection, SSL, pooling, and logging. And they are easily inspectable, as shown in the screenshot. They're designed to make it convenient for you to get started. You should find these parameters quite familiar if you have used UOJ or U.NET before. To override the default configuration values, you need to use the UOPY.ini file. This file must be placed in the working directory of your Python application. In the example shown here, we use the UOPY.ini file to direct UOPY at runtime to use a different hostname other than the default localhost. And we want all the server connections to be secure. And we want to use connection pooling for faster performance and high scalability. In addition, we have increased the logging level to debug because we want to trace all the calls made by UOPY and the data flowed through them. 3 UOPY classes, session, file, sequential file, implement the Python context manager interface. This means they can be used in Python with statement and should always be used that way if possible. It saves you from having to explicitly close these objects and basically eliminates the common forget to close coding mistakes. Such mistakes can be fatal for applications using connection pooling. One important difference between UOPY and UOJ or U.NET is that dynamic arrays are treated as standard Python lists. Almost all Python list operations work on dynamic array objects, such as append, insert, slicing, iteration, etc. Dynamic arrays and Python lists can be used interchangeably when calling UOPY. And we prefer that you always use Python list when working with MV data, and never use marks directly in your code for NLS reasons. In the screenshot, you can see that we pass a Python list directly to the write method of the file object, and it happily takes it. Any data returned from the server are represented as a dynamic array object, but internally it is converted into a Python list. One thing you might get tripped on is with multi-valued or multi-sub-valued fields. If they don't really contain multiple values, they will not be converted into nested lists as you might expect. Instead, they are converted as string values as shown in the screenshot. So it is important to always use the make list and make nested list method on multi-valued or multi-sub-valued fields to make sure that they're correctly structured before you work with them. Please study the code in the screenshot to fully understand this point. With UOPY, we try to make error reporting consistent and easy to use. That's why UOPY only throws one exception type, and that is UError. It might not be as important when you prototype an idea, but in production code, it is critical to always capture UError exceptions when calling UOPY to access the server, and handle these exceptions gracefully by making use of both the error code and error message in them. The error codes are standard across all our UO APIs, including UOJ and UO.NET. They should be familiar to you if you have used them before. That's everything we want to cover in this UOPY introduction presentation. I hope it has given you a good idea of what UOPY is and when, where, and how you might want to use it. Please note that we have 2 additional presentations available that illustrate 2 typical use cases of UOPY and provide a deeper dive into how to develop with UOPY. Thanks very much for joining us today. Please give UOPY a try, and we appreciate all the feedback you can provide.